Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live and welcome to Eating the Elephant, where we talk twice a week about Hurricane Michael recovery, some insurance information, and basically what we try to do is break down this elephant that is hurricane recovery, and we break it into bite-sized pieces for you. I'm sorry for getting started a little bit late today. I got to spend a little bit of extra time with my daughter. I have to tell you, if you're going to have teenagers, we have 3 in the house, and I'm 3 for 3. I have to tell you, if you're going to have teenagers, I recommend mine. They're pretty great. And for those of you that are still able to have your kids around, you're lucky people, because I've got one that punched out last year for college, and I've got one that's headed off again this year. So it's going to get more and more empty in the house. And I have to tell you, I'm beginning to feel the pressure a little bit. But let's get on with it. Again, apologies for being late, but I want to start with talking a little bit about Packout services. We've talked about this before, but there's a particular issue that we've had come up this week, and it's that now that people have gotten to the point of getting their stuff back, a lot of people have had success. They've had most of their repairs done. They're moving back in. When they're getting things back from their Packout services, they're finding an awful lot of things broken, and they're finding some things missing. Now, some things I think have been missing from the inventories that the Packout services have provided. So that obviously is a problem. As far as the Packout company, there's probably not a lot you're going to be able to do about that. If you want to know what sort of recourse you have against the Packout company, the first thing you have to do is you have to look at the contract you sign. And I know that most of you probably did the same thing. You were under a great deal of pressure. It was right after the storm. You had walls and ceilings collapsing around you and your stuff, and you called somebody to deal with the problem. What we're finding is that some of those services did really, really well. Some of those services did very, very poorly. And what we're finding is incomplete inventories, missing inventories. We're hearing from people that are dealing with the issue that, suddenly my 50-inch TV is gone. Suddenly that little piece of something that was very precious to them maybe is now broken. And if you look at your contract, I think what most of you are going to find is that the contract limits the liability of the Packout company to a certain amount per pound, kind of like a moving company sometimes. And then they will tell you also most of the time that fragile items that get broken are not going to be their responsibility. So what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to take it in the teeth? No, it does not. That is part of your claim, part of your original claim with your insurance company. And there's a particular provision in your policy that states something to the effect of coverage is provided for items that are no longer in your home if you are moving them trying to protect them. So if you are moving your stuff out of a damaged home, that is obviously an effort to protect and keep that stuff intact. And if it is damaged or missing in the course of that process, it should be covered as part of your claim. You have no new deductible, you have no new claim. It is simply a reopening, if necessary, of your current Hurricane Michael claim from October 10th of last year. So what I would suggest you do is once you get everything in, you notice things are damaged, make a list. Just keep a notepad by your bed and make a list of things that you find that are either missing or damaged or something such as that. And when you really sort of feel like you have got that list completed, go ahead and send it to the insurance company and ask for more money. Now, having said that, that does not mean you are precluded from then going back later and going, oh, well, I also forgot X or Y. We started putting things up on the walls and realized I was missing this piece of artwork, or I was missing a mirror, or something such as that. So don't feel like just because you send them another list, you can't redo it. If they tell you your claim is closed, well, tell them that to undertake the 3 mouse clicks it will take to reopen the claim. A closed claim means nothing at this point. I'd like to remind everybody that you've got 3 years to file supplements to your claim after Hurricane Michael is over with. So if you continue to discover things that are missing or broken or something such as that down the road, you can still submit those again as supplemental claims. I want to talk a little bit about general contractors. A couple things have come up this week that I wanted to mention. Number one, we've had a couple of folks that have called and said, my general contractor is telling me he can't find subs and that it's now my responsibility to do that. Is that true? Well, no. The idea behind hiring a general contractor is they should have those subcontractor relationships, and they should be able to not only supervise those people when they're on site, but they should be able to get to those people, and they should be able to make sure that they're paid appropriately. So I want us to be practical here. If your GC is having trouble, say for instance, finding an electrician, and you happen to know one, or if you if you have a particular trade subcontractor that you want to use, you can tell your general contractor that you want them used. I have a certain plumber that I deal with, so if I want to have that plumber work on my home, I simply need to report that information to my general contractor. It is still your home. You may have signed a contract with your GC, but it's your home. It's your decision who you use to fix your house. And frankly, the GC will probably appreciate the fact that you're bringing somebody that has some interest in the home. But it is the responsibility of the general contractor, and if they're trying to lay that responsibility off on you, you should view that with some skepticism. If you can possibly help them, obviously it's only going to benefit you. But remember, we have to be advocates for ourselves in these times. And so what you may have to do is get to your general contractor and say, look, I appreciate you're having a hard time. We all are. But this is your responsibility, and this is why you're getting the 20% above the normal cost of doing this job. They get 10% profit and 10% overhead typically in a job. And part of what they're getting paid to do is to find those subcontractors for you and make sure they work in a reasonable time and reasonable quality. So press that button. I also want to mention to you that if you pay your general contractor, that does not automatically protect you from having a lien placed on your home. We've had a person approach us this week, and this has happened before, and I don't think I've mentioned it. I needed to get back to this. If your general contractor gets paid and does not pay your subcontractors, those subcontractors can file a lien on your home. So you need to be very, very careful, and you need to keep a watch probably on the public record if you're having significant work done to your home and you are feeling a little squirrely about your general contractor. If you have, what I've said before is trust your instincts, and this is another one of those times you should trust your instincts. If things begin to wobble a little bit, then keep an eye on the public record. If you have some questions about how to do that, where to go, give me a call at the office or shoot me an email, a private message. I'll be glad to put you together with some links to search out this information. It's called a mechanics lien generally. What happens is a contractor, when they do work on your house, whether it's a general contractor or a subcontractor, within 90 days of the last time they do work or supply materials to your home, they can file a lien on your home if they're not paid. Now, a lot of contractors have pushed well beyond that 90 days, and after 90 days, they can't file a lien. It will not be enforceable. Also, when they file a lien on your home, they have only 15 days to serve you with notice. Now that means not only do they have to notify you, but they have to be able to prove that they notified you. Usually that's with a certified letter. Sometimes it would be with a process server, but that's pretty unusual in this case. But they have to be able to prove that they did exactly that. They notified you of that lien, and if not, it very well may be deemed unenforceable as well. There's an awful lot of rules, an awful lot of processes that have to be followed in order for a contractor to effectively put a lien on your house and make it stick. So if you've had a lien filed on your house, you should call an expert, probably call an attorney, and particularly if you've paid out significant dollars, there might be a way to get that lien squashed, okay? So again, that's going to be something, this is important enough that you need to really get an expert, because that lien will stay on that property for 10 years, meaning you'll have trouble financing it, you won't be able to sell your home, things such as that, for a 10-year period, and that's a long time. So I want to move away directly from insurance things, and I want to come back to something that sort of links up to what I talked about earlier a couple of episodes ago when I was talking about how to recover financially and the kind of records you need to keep. And it was pointed out to me that there are apps for everything these days. And so I wanted to do a little sort of app review and give you some ideas as to some apps you might want to put on your phone or your iPad, your laptop, whatever. But some of the best apps and some of the ones I think that are the most effective. There's hundreds out there, and you can certainly look on Google Play, or you can look, if you're an iPhone person, you can look in the Apple Store. But I want to give you a couple that I think I would recommend, and I've looked at all of these, and frankly, they're pretty effective at what they do. I want to start with other, kind of the ones that don't fit into a neat category. The very first one is you should download your insurer's app if you have one for your homeowner's insurance. You might consider doing it for your car as well. You may never need them. You may never want to use them. And if you have a kitchen fire or just an auto accident, you're probably going to want to call your agent. But after a storm, you might be able to get very good, valuable information. And with one click, you may be able to report a claim. So look at your insurer's application. And the other app you're going to want to have on your phone, if you don't already, is your bank. You're going to need to communicate with your bank. You're going to need to know what kind of money you have available. Cash is king, as I've said before, but you need to know what sort of cash balances you have. And if you need to get out of the area and maybe go get money at an ATM or something, it's certainly going to be helpful to know what's there. You'll also have phone numbers, contacts. Those are the kind of things you're going to need. So that's a good app as well. I would recommend Dropbox. I've talked about this before. You may have a different cloud service you like, but Dropbox is very effective. It's very quick. It's universal. And one of the things that I like very much about it is for key items, you can designate those that you can get to them offline. In other words, it will live in the cloud, but if you cannot link up to the cloud because, say, cell towers are down, hint, Verizon, you can still get to that information because it's also stored locally on your device. So Dropbox is one I would recommend. If not, use the cloud service that you prefer. The other one I would suggest is No Scam. I've talked about this before. Attorney General Ashley Moody has put together an application that you can report price gouging. So I expect that app to remain up well after this storm, because every time a hurricane hits, it's going to become an issue. And so that's a good way to report price gouging. So moving on, I think you need a good weather app. The two I have on my phone that I recommend are Weather Underground. It's now owned by the Weather Channel, and it's one of those that's it's just a good, very usable app. It helps you track storms. It can help you do all kinds of things. Some people prefer like the NOAA app, things like that. But Weather Underground, I think, is a good, very versatile, very broad-based application. The other one that I have on my phone is called My Radar. And it's simply live radar feeds, and you can put layers of various things in here for cloud cover, wind direction, things like that. I used this when we used to go boating a lot. It was very helpful, and it's something I still hang on to. I would recommend that just for looking at raw data if it makes you curious. For communication, we all know that communication was one of our greatest problems. Verizon, after the storm, cell towers were down, power was out. People, even when they had maybe cell service and they were able to get to some power, maybe they didn't have a charger, but communication was absolutely nightmarish. One of the most effective ways that I think people were able to keep in touch was via OnStar, if you have that in your vehicle, if you have it available, because it's satellite based. Basically, you've got a satellite phone built into your car if you have OnStar, so that's something you may want to consider lighting up. But for communication, WhatsApp is very, very effective. You can basically make cell calls, video calls, things like that. If you can get to a Wi-Fi area, again, that's a little bit shaky sometimes, but if you can get to somewhere that maybe has a hotspot, like we were all using for business after the storm, then that's probably a good move. The other that is new to me is called Fire Chat, and it's really meant, I think, more so than WhatsApp, for when there is a lot more infrastructure damage. And it appears to me to be a little bit more robust and a little bit more friendly when signals are bad, when you can't get somewhere. It seems to hold those messages longer if they don't go through. I'm going to have to investigate that one a good bit more, but Fire Chat is the way, is one you might want to look at. For general resources, I'm going to finish with general resources. The very first one is the Red Cross Hurricane app. They have an application that's a very good, very broad app. It gives you lots of good information. It talks about shelters. It talks about recovery resources. It talks about emergency response. There's all kind of things there. And I think that's a good application for you. From a practical sense, I think you ought to download Airbnb and Gas Buddy. If you think about some of the biggest problems we had right after the storm, one was a place to stay because so much of our housing stock was damaged and some people were having to drive 2 and 3 hours. I remember that 2.5 hour commute every morning and every evening, and it was no fun at all. But Airbnb is one. Gas Buddy will tell you where gas is available, tells you a little about prices, and it's crowdsourced. In other words, it has good data from people that are actually on the ground. So Gas Buddy is very effective. I don't use it day to day, but after a storm, when gas becomes a real problem, I think that's a really, really good option for people. The final one I would tell you is again, kind of a general resource app and sort of crosses over into communications, is iHeartRadio. Normally, most of us now use streaming services, Spotify, things like that to get our music. I use satellite radio a lot, but iHeartRadio is a really good app, and it gives you access to an awful lot of radio stations and a lot of good information. And if you'll remember, WKGC and the iHeartRadio group were both on the air after the hurricane. And iHeartRadio and KGC were both just a wealth of information. Again, we had a lot of problems with communication and knowing we could get information and even push information out if it was really important to a broad audience was just invaluable. So there's a few of those. Don't worry about trying to write them down and things like that. I'll post them here in just a minute on our Facebook page. But I wanted to share those things so you can do that now before the cell towers go out. You need to download them and frankly, test them out and know how to use them. And if they're not useful for you, just delete them. It's not a big deal. But thanks again for listening. Again, I'm sorry we're a little bit late today. As usual, we'll see you on Wednesday.